I have no problem with political polarization if its net effect is that of truth.
Yeah.
What's virtuous about being moderate in the face of someone's life being turned to ruins by lies? You don't get to lie and then defame the person fighting that lie for polarizing America. Top 5 leftist hoaxes of 2019. So question of the day, let me ask you this. Genuinely, how do you vet news stories today? If you read or hear something interesting, what do you do to determine the veracity? I'm really curious, let me know, because it is getting pretty difficult. So
very.
Obviously, I believe that the left is wrong. And we'll say, why do you say right or left? Shut up. I believe they're mainly wrong about everything. But that means wrong, not dishonest.
Right.
But we have seen a new threat emerging in 2019. In the past, they would usually bolster their claims, the progressive left, with evidence that maybe we didn't think supported, we would disagree on the idea that it supported their conclusions. But now there's a movement, and when I say this, I mean Hollywood, media, and those in the DNC. So I know someone out there like, I'm a classical liberal. I get it. Not talking about you, Ruben.
Looking at you, Ruben.
But they've pivoted to completely false hoaxes to support the majority, certainly a plurality of their political agenda. So we're going to look at the top 5 verifiable hoaxes perpetrated by the left in 2019. And we're not even at summer break yet.
No.
Keep in mind.
They've packed them in.
The MTV VJs just packed up their tarp from Cancun, and we already have 5 to go through. So
you watch
number 5, Kavanaugh rape hoax, obviously, is a pretty big one. A lot of people are saying, wasn't that 2018? No, it happened this year. That's how slowly it's going by. So after the investigations, they showed us that Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh didn't have any kind of a record. Suddenly, Democrats, they trotted out lines of women claiming that he not only assaulted them sexually, but he would run rape gang rings. There's no way that word is going to sound. I made it sound. How can you make rape gang rings sound worse? I just did. Rape gang rings.
Something. And they did it right before the vote.
Lest you think I'm exaggerating, because a lot of people forget, here you go.
Indelible in the hippocampus is the laughter.
She's a doctor,
This third accuser, her name is Julie Swetnick, publicly identified herself and alleged that Kavanaugh and others in the early 1980s spiked the drinks of girls at high school parties with intoxicants to make it easier for them to be gang raped.
Okay, so
it must be true.
Gay, rape, gag, rings, gang rings. It's very difficult to say. Say it 5 times fast. If you do, they'll make sure that you never make Supreme Court. So Blasey Ford, her accusations, by the way, completely fell apart. Before we get to the gang rape, she couldn't determine the place where the alleged assault happened. The people she remembered being there, they denied the event ever having taken place. She couldn't remember the year it happened, and outside counsel concluded that there would be no reasonable prosecutor who would bring criminal charges against the judge. Her story kept changing, and as time went on, by the way, the notes from her therapist presented a completely different account than the one that she gave in her hearing. That Julie Swetnick she just mentioned made the gang rape accusations. I cannot say that word.
It's impossible.
Anyway, the bottom line is, after mulling it over, understanding potentially the threat of perjury, she walked it back a little bit. Really? But you say he was a gang rapist. It's about optics.
Wait, what?
What optics are bad here? Namely that I lied about gang rape.
Those ones.
In the war of PR, lying about gang rape. By the way, the third accuser admitted, by the way, she'd never even met Kavanaugh. That was one too. So those are the three main accusers.
At least be in the same room with a guy one time in your life.
This is the highest level of hoax. It's a coordinated effort by Democrat activists to push a completely false story in order to prevent a Supreme Court nomination. And of course, the left, they didn't accept the results when their hoax fell to pieces. They still smear him as a rapist. And by the way, I'm not in the business of ascribing motive or intent here, but honestly, let me ask you this. What does it take? 2 out of 3 were verifiably completely false. They pulled it back themselves, with the only one remaining presenting zero evidence, absent the cases where she presented verifiably false evidence. What does it take to just admit you were wrong? What does it take to just allow for innocent until proven guilty? Number 4 hoax, we have to rattle off this. There's so many here. Of course, the Russian collusion conspiracy theory. Now, I know this technically, of course, it started years ago. Came to a head in 2019. Democrats refused to accept the results of our democratic election.
Of course.
Which, of course, should send shivers down your spine when you're talking about democratic socialism. Well, you don't even believe in the first part, which you're using to try to make the second part sound less shitty. You don't even believe in that first part. You're trying to whitewash it with the part you don't care about. Anyways, they claimed it was this result of a vast conspiracy between Trump and Russia. Lest you think we're making it up, let's get in the DeLorean.
Welcome back to Reliable Sources, where every day we're trying to keep track of the drip, drip, drip of the Russia investigations.
And it was not until
We're trying to
after
keep
the
track.
election that the extent of the Russian involvement in our presidential election really came to light.
So you
Director
have seen
Clapper.
direct evidence of collusion?
I don't want to go into specifics, but I will say that there is evidence that is not circumstantial and is very much worthy of investigation.
Listen,
How's he in office?
I don't want to get into specifics. Why is that? Namely, I don't have any.
Not a single one.
That is exactly what he
Pretty
said.
sure, but I'm pretty sure he did the Devil's Triangle in a rape gate gang ring. So by the way, how did this end up? We conducted an investigation, cost taxpayers, you and I, good for us, $25 million.
Oh, wow.
Found
Yeah.
there was no collusion, there was no obstruction, no criminal activity whatsoever. By the way, we also found out that some of the warrants were granted based on evidence presented from sources like the Steele dossier created by Fusion GPS. We've talked about that, a Democrat research firm in Russian. So that's kind of something that maybe we should look into.
Yeah.
And I would say this, in 2018, maybe we could have still called this a hoax.
Yeah.
Or maybe it would have been unfair, I guess, to call it a hoax, but because we were still investigating. But now we know it was a false claim based on false evidence.
Yeah.
Proven false after 2 years, $25 million. I mean, that's as thoroughly debunked as a hoax can get. All of this, Hillary Clinton, she still claims the election was stolen.
As I've been telling candidates who have come to see me, you can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
Or lose!
You know, it's almost like she's talking about herself there.
Like, Hillary, that seems like a really niche motivational speech.
Very specific.
How many of us would that apply to? That one was more for me. And of course, Democrats are calling for more investigations.
Yeah.
This is where I think it's gone from hoax to conspiracy theory. And this occurs with almost all conspiracy theories. It doesn't matter how much you disprove the conspiracy. They believe it even more after you provide them with research. You see it with Trump and the Russians. If we didn't land on the moon, vaccines cause autism, or Brett Kavanaugh ran rape gate gang in the Devil's Triangle underground. The point is, it doesn't matter if you present it. It's like, hold on, there's complete evidence that's not the case. Or do they want you to believe that there's evidence that it's not the case? What? So about the Russians, NASA, but I repeat myself. What?
Wait, what?
What's happening? Also, if the Earth were rotating, if you went up in a helicopter and you went up and you were in Cameroon, you would land in Schenectady. What?
I mean, have you been to Antarctica?
By the way,
I want all those people to move to Canada.
Hit the notification bell. They won't do that because they don't believe it exists. Fall off the edge of the earth with a wild link. Bookmark the page because apparently notifications don't necessarily work. Join Mug Club. And, of course, subscribe on iTunes for some exclusive content there. Yeah. Hoax number 3 in 2019. Again, this is all the same. I know people are going to think I'm scraping. No, this was really easy.
Yeah, very, very easy.
Jussie Smollett hate hoax. That seems... So what did he claim?
Best actor.
For people who forget the absurdity of it, and this is important to go back, I think, and look at the time capsule, kind of like when you have your 20-year high school reunion, because we need to remember what it is that everyone believed at that moment in time. Freezing Chicago night, 2 masked Trump supporters said this is MAGA country before they tried to strangle him and pour bleach on him.
The attackers? It's the attackers, but it's also the attacks. It's like, at first it was a thing of like, listen, if I tell the truth, then that's it, because it's the truth.
What?
See, the truth
then it became a thing of like, how can you doubt that? Like, how do you not believe that?
Let me take a wild guess.
And then it became a thing of like, a thing of like. It's not necessarily that you don't believe that this is the truth.
No.
You don't even want to see.
How many times he said the truth?
No, it's that we don't believe it. The only part you got wrong is the truth. It's we don't believe you.
Oh my gosh.
It is the truth. And then how can somebody but then you realize that's because it is the truth. How many times did you just say truth? You're like Destiny's Child who rhymed down like that with down like that 5 times.
Oh my gosh.
By the way, in case, again, we now know the 2 Nigerian brothers worked on the show Empire, purchased the materials using the attack.
Yeah.
Jussie paid them. We have the checks. We have the stuff that he paid them with. It's not just
the first time in history paid by check.
Again, just in case you don't believe me, here's a video of them purchasing what item? Everything for the hate crime. Look at that.
Looks like
masks, hats,
camouflage.
Masks, a noose, and a bottle of Clorox. Boys will be boys.
That's a Saturday night. That is a Saturday night.
Yeah.
Everybody buys those things.
So this is important because the DA found Smollett guilty fabricating the hoax.
Yes.
Hoax. What is it with my mouth isn't working? Refused to sentence him to anything but 16 hours of community service.
That's a lot.
And this is one of those things, I think this is one of those situations people will look back in history, kind of like with OJ, and I'm not saying he's like OJ, just as unlikable. But they'll look back in history and say, how did that guy get away with it? And that's what's so corrosive with these hoaxes, because it received wall-to-wall coverage from the leftist media, who really wanted this to be a hate crime by MAGA hat-wearing racists. They really wanted that to be a case. When it fell apart, they're not going to be the ones left with eggs on their face. What, they're going to admit they're wrong, or that Kavanaugh isn't a gang rapist? What do you expect from us? Hoax number 2, we're getting very near the end of this. The Covington kids, the hate hoax. Remember the kids wearing MAGA hats? They supposed originally, again, time capsule. Oh, look, lies everywhere. They supposedly they surrounded a poor Native American, Indian, who they were trying to have an Indigenous Peoples March, and apparently the kids surrounded this what's the term we use? Redskin. Shouting, "Build that wall." This was the coverage.
Catholic high school students seen wearing "Make America Great Again" hats, appearing to face off with Nathan Phillips, a 65-year-old Native American, as he pounded his drum near the Lincoln Memorial during an Indigenous Peoples March.
I heard them saying, build that wall, build that wall. You know, this is indigenous lands. We're not supposed to have walls here. We never did.
Yeah, well, I guess if the toothless meth head claims he heard it,
it must be true.
Good enough for me. This is reliable sources, after all. Mr. Toothless Meth Head, did you hear them yell out racial epithets? Yes, I believe that I did. Good enough for me. Don Lemon, you're next.
Accurate source.
That's awesome.
What actually happened? Students were waiting for their ride, and they were being harassed by black Israelites for an hour, and then Nathan Phillips decided to pile on. It turns out that he approached the students, banging his drum in their faces. Here we have some video. Yeah. There we go. He's walking in.
Business.
Here come Gad. Here come Gad.
What's that guy yelling?
I don't know what that means.
Dad?
Here come Dad? Well, listen, it makes more sense when you're saying that Nathan Phillips is a deranged activist who he does this all the time. After the Covington kids controversy, he tried to storm a Catholic church in the middle of mass, banging his drum.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Students of Covington Catholic High School be reprimanded, not just by the school
not a charismatic guy,
and seniors, but by their upcoming universities. Maybe another time.
How to respect prayer, how to respect ceremony. It is not even their lands, and we still help them respect.
Can someone please take his drum and put his head through it so he wears it like a necklace? It's not a real call to violence, by the way, because it's just cartoonish. It wouldn't hurt at all. It's just like, duh, boss. That's what I want to see. You always find it funny that he's talking about his land and he's on the iPhone? The white man forces me to live this way. Really?
I don't think so.
I mean, that's the updated Android.
Seems like just aren't that bad for you.
If I don't update it, they throttle my battery. Anyway, that's enough time. The final one, it's because 5 is the magic number on YouTube, so we could have done 20. There are a bunch of smaller hate crimes. Hoax number 1 is just a whole bunch of them because 5 wasn't enough. So there's like this example was a fake anti-Semitic attack on a Jewish restaurant in Canada. This got wall-to-wall coverage.
The Jewish communities in Canada are still trying to make sense of an alleged fake anti-Semitic attack in Winnipeg. Police say the owners of a family restaurant staged everything, but the family insists that they're telling the truth.
Did you fake the vandalism around
this one? We didn't. Because we don't joke about swastika on our walls.
One of the owners said she was assaulted and painted with hateful graffiti.
Those are terrifying.
But after investigating, police charged 3 members of the family with public mischief.
Imagine an episode of Lock Up with a swastika narwhal. He's got the Edward Norton American History tattoo. This means not welcome. Anyway, it was fake, by the way. And there were a bunch of fake LGBT hate crimes in Portland. The reporter Andy Ngo, and not going to be featured on this show anymore. He researched a bunch of these reports in a supposed wave of hate crimes. We've heard about this a lot, right? Yeah. This is why it's important, because the narrative has been set by this wave, the surge in hate crimes.
It's everywhere.
This investigation found that they almost all fit the pattern of being highly publicized despite having no evidence, ultimately leading to no police investigations. So why are these number 1?
That's a bad look.
Yeah.
Instead of a bigger profile hoax? And that's because these smaller hoaxes, they actually push the narrative more than the big ones, because fewer people know that they're hoaxes. Media reports on them at one point or another, and then they turn out to be false because these aren't as high profile of people they don't hear about it. They never knew that it was a hoax. They all remember was the original. Just like you have many people, by the way, who still believe Kavanaugh to be a rapist, but not as many because there have been enough people like us who've been at the forefront of that. The media indicts. The media is very quick to indict. They don't vindicate. Okay, by the time vindication or truth emerges, they've moved on. They're super fast to indict, slow to correct or vindicate, if ever. We're at a point where leftists, they openly push hoaxes on CNN, MSNBC, New York Times. It's not people at the fringe. That's what's important. We have senators, congressmen, presidential candidates pushing hoaxes that have been conclusively disproven, okay? And by the way, then these people have the nerve, this is what really bothers me, the nerve to bemoan today's political polarization. I've said this so many times and I stand by it. I have no problem with political polarization if its net effect is that of truth. What's virtuous about being moderate in the face of someone's life being turned to ruins by lies? Let me ask you this, okay? Let's say you're up for a job, big promotion at your job, okay? 3 women come forward and accuse you of running rape gangs, which has zero basis in truth. If you don't go along with it, if you fight it with every fiber of your being, are you guilty of contributing to the office polarized climate? What if it was your kids who were accused of a hate crime? And if you don't passionately fight back, their names, their reputations, ability to make future livings, they'll be ruined for the rest of their lives.
It's called obstruction.
Right.
It's obstruction.
Is the Gee Willikers, let's listen to both sides, milquetoast pansy, more virtuous than the person who fights back? And this is the thing, I'm not going to play this game with the left because like you see with these hoaxes, they're only going to get worse. And then when disproven, they move on. You don't get to lie and then defame the person fighting that lie for polarizing America. So this is something I think everyone out there needs to decide. You have to take inventory of how you've reacted to these stories, okay? And ask yourself a question, what's more desirable? A lie that brings people together at the cost of destroying everything, but particularly an innocent person, or the responding truth that sows division? Might be a tough one for you. For me, it's pretty easy. Hey there, if you like this video, subscribe or click one of these videos playing in a box. You know what? Hit the notification bell because subscriptions don't really mean anything anymore, especially if you're not 18 or older, at the very least logged into YouTube as 18 or older, because sometimes people are 25, but they don't know how to use the YouTube system properly, and then just hit the notification bell or you hate yourself.